I mean, I go in and talk to different CIOs and organizations that I go in, and I say, what are you working on? And they go, I'm moving to the cloud. And they go, really? And I go, yeah. And it's a big project for them and so forth. And they kind of go, well, what are you doing to generate revenue for the company?
Welcome to CyberSecurity Heroes, an Iron Scales podcast about you, the heroes of cybersecurity. You're about to hear and learn practical and experiential knowledge in our conversations with CISOs, security directors and architects, SOC analysts, and other InfoSec stars so we can become more cyber resilient and safer together. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to Cybersecurity Heroes. I'm your host for today's episode, Brendan Rudd, Community Director at IronScales, an email security platform powered by AI, enhanced by thousands of customer security teams, and built around detecting and removing threats in the inbox. We offer a service that is fast to deploy, easy to operate, and is unparalleled in the ability to stop all types of email threats, including advanced attacks like business email compromise, account takeover, and more. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get into the show. Hey Pete, welcome to the show.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you for joining us today on Cybersecurity Heroes. Before we begin, I'd love for you to give us a little bit about your background and what you're working on these days.
My background is I've been CIO now for over, I guess 20 years for different organizations. As you saw and you and I have discussed, I was came out of the Department of Defense and was CIO at Alamo National Car Rental, CTO at Wyndham Hotel Group. Did a stint CIO for an extended stay lodging company. And then I ran an IT outsourcing company in Shanghai, and we built Walmart.com, Red Prairie, Agilysys, and typical outsourcing company. And then I just completed a stint as CIO for Friendly's and Johnny Rockets restaurants. Most of these guys bring me in to improve their IT to run their IT organizations and then to improve it. And been very successful to be surrounded by great people through my career.
So you mentioned being in the role and as a CIO for around 20 plus years. How did you get into security and why do you love the role of CIO?
Well, security is paramount. And it's really taken a higher calling than what it did 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you're a little bit concerned about it and a few viruses on some desktops, and then it came SQL injection, and then you started taking a lot more. This day and age, and I would always say that it's a very contentious, it's a very dangerous world, but this day and age is really gotten to be bad. So it's really like one of the top three priorities for the CIO is to protect the brand and make sure they got good security of their business and of their technology. So I think how I got into it was I think you just kind of have to go do it. I don't mean it in a bad sense, but it's just if you don't do it, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
So can you define for us the definition of CIO and how does it differ from the CISO role?
Yeah. CIO, and there are a lot of different, there are a lot of different views on the CIO and a lot of different callings of that. But in my mind, the CIO has a global view of technology in the organization, from customers to the supporting side, all the way through the corporate infrastructure. And he's got to be responsible for the technology and then also trying to improve revenue for the company. A part of that is, of course, security. The CISO, CISO is extremely important because either he works for you or he is a report somewhere else in the organization. He's your partner to really help you focus on security. It's his job all day long, whereas the CIO is part of his job. So I always have had great working relationships with my CISOs.
And this is an old debate, but I don't get to talk to many CIOs, so I may as well ask, should a CISO report to the CIO and why?
And I will tell you, I don't care. Okay. And I'm not trying to be flippant about the response. He can work for me. He can be a different part of the organization. He's still going to levy requirements on the IT team, i.e., this needs to be fixed, this needs to be solved. IT, the CIO needs to champion a security council, the security processes, procedures, governance, risk mitigation, so forth. So they've got to work together. And if they work for you, great. If not, they don't, that's fine also. When they do report to me, I always have a great understanding with my CISOs. And I say to them, hey, look, I've got your back. We're going to work together. I'm just as much invested in this as you are. By the way, if you don't get the response you need out of me, I give you full authority to go talk to whoever you need to in the organization. If it means to be the CEO or the CFO or whoever it is to safeguard the organization, I've got your back, go do that. And that's tough to understand. But if the CIO is doing his job and he's solving all the security issues, you don't have to worry about that too much.
And who, in your opinion, should report to the CEO?
As far as what, in an organization?
Yeah.
Well, it depends. It depends on what the organization is doing. But the normal executive group, of course, is CFO, HR, CIO. But a lot of CIOs report to the CFO. You have the ops teams, market, or could be development, ops, manufacturing, whatever the business is, and so forth, reports into the CEO also. But sometimes it gets a little complicated that the CEO needs to be a little bit more focused. So he'll have a president or he'll have a chief operating officer to help him out who will take a lot of those functions under his wing or her wing to go execute them.
And why do so few CISOs become CIOs?
That's a good question. And I will also throw in on top of that, why don't so many CIOs move up in organizations? And I think most of it is that they're so downwardly focused. A good CIO needs to focus on the business and improving the business. And I often talk to them, and they're playing in the world of commodities. I'm moving to the cloud or running servers or data centers or things of that nature. And you need to be focused on improving revenue. When you can start improving revenue, and that will move the organization out of a commodity play into a strategic play. The CIO is normally taking on more responsibility in the organization. But the CISO, the chief data officer, the chief data scientist are normally downward-facing positions trying to get their job done. And it's tough for them to bridge out of those positions into a position of higher responsibility. They're also very much important to the business. And so that doesn't necessarily allow them to go higher into, running marketing or running some critical projects or things of that nature.
And what advice can you give on how these two roles should work together?
You heard me say it earlier, and I'm a big proponent. Everyone has an important job to go do in business. We don't have enough resources as it is. And it's just up to you to go work together. And I know that sounds really simple and I'm placating it, but, the CIO needs to work with manufacturing or work with the operations teams, needs to work with HR, needs to work with the CFO, needs to work with accounting. They need to work with everybody. Same thing for the CISO. He needs to work with everybody because it's not a IT position, it's actually an organization position to protect the entire brand and the organization going forward.
And I remember the last time we spoke, we were discussing the challenges faced by CIOs. So, if you can talk to that a little bit and what keeps you up at night.
What keeps me up at night is actually security, to be honest with you. Normally, when you get into an organization, you got to get your process procedures in place. You've got to make sure the IT team is executing. But then once those are in place, the thing that really starts keeping you awake at night is security. Are you batting down? And you see on the news, there's this threat and that threat. Are we ready for it? And you send off emails in the middle of the night. What are we doing about this? What are we doing about that? If the answers come back not too good, well, the first thing in the morning normally is we're going to lock it down and get it fixed, and we got to solve these type issues. So that's what I often say. It makes me bald and gray at a young age is security issues, and it's not so much that it's. Of course, we all know this is not all IT. Yes, we have the safeguard of the systems and security and so forth. But it could just be real simple little things like the accounts payable person opens up an email and then in comes some type of ransomware. It could be a piece of equipment is disappearing out of the organization and so forth. It could be risk to the organization of, we don't have a good data retention policy and I got tons and tons of data around. It could be, why are we processing credit cards? We need to try our best to devoid ourselves of all this valuable. You need to keep your valuable data, and the data is extremely important. But do you really need to process credit cards centrally in your organization, or can it go from the endpoint on up to lower your risk level and improve your risk tolerance?
And you also mentioned to me funding and investment. Can you dive a little deeper into that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Real simple. Never enough. It's not uncommon, right? You're in business for that, but you get a piece of the pie. And sometimes the risks are higher than what you really have resources for. And it's up to the CIO to go get the resources to go solve the security holes. And of course, be the CISO, but at the end of the day, there's one pot of capital and there's only so much money. And so you've got to prioritize and solve the major critical holes best that you can.
And you spoke quite passionately about what companies get wrong in terms of not aligning technology to the business needs. I would love for you to expand on that as well.
Yeah, people often ask me, how do I go do turnarounds and stuff like that? And you heard a piece of it earlier is, we got to go do the commodity stuff, change servers out. We've got to, solve, move to the cloud, systems to the cloud, those type of things. But that's important, and we got to deliver on those on time, on budget. But those are all what I normally consider commodity play. The other major area that IT guys don't really consider is 50% of our job is service. Every one of our users or customers has an IT need, and we've got to be able to solve it quickly and efficiently. And all of our customers and users need to have a good experience with technology. So those are the things that I really kind of consider important.
And you mentioned that most CIOs are wasting their time on commodity plays.
Yeah, they do. I go in and talk to different CIOs and organizations that I go in and I say, what are you working on? And they go, I'm moving to the cloud. And they go, really? And I go, yeah. And it's a big project for them and so forth. And they kind of go, well, what are you doing to generate revenue for the company? And it's like, generate revenue? My job is to operate the technology. And I said, no, you got a seat at the table to generate revenue for the company. So what are you doing about that? All these people here need to add, if you could add value, you're going to be in a much better position for the IT team than if you're not adding value. And adding value moves you over to the revenue stream. So I'll tell you 95% of the CIOs focus on the commodity play instead of on the revenue play. You focus on the revenue play, and you're going to move IT out of a commodity and into a strategic asset. And you're right. As I said earlier, you never have enough resources, and you've got to fix the servers with what resources you have there. But where you do have a little extra money, or you pick your projects in the organization, you got to pick the ones that really can help generate the revenue. And it's simple. in larger organizations, you can do magnificent net present value, ROI calculations and things like that. But even the smaller S&B organizations, you can do a real simple ROI. We invest here, I'm going to save this, or I'm going to generate revenue here. And then you prioritize all the needs in the project, and then you take it before a capital team or a capital committee, or just in front of the executive committee, and you say, this is what we're working on. And this is what HR needs. This is what finance needs. This is the operations team. I don't have enough money. Here are all the different projects. Here are the ROIs. And we decide as a team. What I often find that does is that moves IT out from being the roadblock to the executive team makes a decision. And most of them are actually very reasonable. If you start putting it out there and the return on investment, the value of it, they understand. And they'll understand if their project is kind of low, why it's not getting done. It's simple. Hear me say this also. It's simple stuff. Most of the stuff where IT teams fail is they don't do the stuff well, i.e. they'll go in and talk project, but they won't talk ROI and business value. But everyone knows about ROI and business value. They all know about process and procedures. But what are your processes and procedures? ITIL is wonderful. Maybe you can't put all of them in, but you can put 4 or 5 of them in and have strong KPIs and make sure you got great service. What is your development methodology? You just can't go say, this is it, and expect everyone to follow it. You've got to have what is the best for the organization through and through, design for the organization, design to fit that organization, and solve a lot of different illities, and you'll be much more successful.
So coming back to the time wasting and lack of focus on, in your words, revenue, where's the miscommunication happening? Is in most cases, are the CEOs ill-informed? They don't realize that their IT teams are working on things they shouldn't be. Doesn't it come from the top down? If everybody, is on the same page, then these things shouldn't happen.
Yeah, good question. When you get up to running technology in a business or leading the initiative in the business, it's up to the CIO. One time I saw a post on LinkedIn from a CIO, and he says, CEOs need to know how to leverage technology, and CEOs, need to do this, that, and the other. And I said, I got news for you, guy. That's your job. It's up to you as CIO to go do that. You need to be able to manage up in an organization and have the CEO's ear. He has a lot of priorities and a lot of issues. I don't ever expect him to run IT. And I tell the people that work for me, and it's real simple. If your boss is telling you how to do your job, it's not a good thing. I need to be running my organization. I'm accountable. I'm responsible. I'll make my customers happy, and we're going to get the job done. And it's not to say, but we're going to go do this type thing. You got to get smart about how you go do that. You got to know there's not enough capital for everybody, but you have to go talk to different people and say, this is what the priorities are. What do you think? And then when you come together in the executive committee, it's this. And then you say, hey, I got some security issues I need to resolve. I've got to get this solved, or else we really could be exposed and have a lot of issues. And they'll go, well, yeah. I say, here's the cost. Now, you're not going to be able to solve everything sometimes, so there is risk, right? But the risk, though, is it a good calculated risk, or is it going to cause you a lot of problem? There's, most of the ransomware, that does cost money. The real issue is it takes IT out of the game for 3 to 4 weeks while they remediate and clean it all up. And then you're going to pay the ransom. Then you're going to pay the technology fee to remediate it. If you want to have security funding, you'll read every will tell you get the most after you've been breached. And that's the wrong way to go do it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that is kind of the way it is. But it's up to the CIO and the CISO to say, here are the risks. Some of them you can kind of live with. And this is all risk analysis 101. Some you can't live with, some of them you can live with. But you got to be able to articulate and understand what the risk is. In the big ones, you're going to need some funding and get it fixed. And it may come from a project. It may come from marketing fund. It may come from somewhere else. But the risk to the brand is so high, you're going to have to go solve it quickly.
CyberSecurity Heroes is brought to you by IronScales, an AI-powered, self-learning email security platform that helps security professionals proactively prevent, detect, and remediate phishing attacks in a matter of seconds, not hours or days. And we have an exclusive offer for our podcast listeners. Discover dormant phishing threats in your organization's mailboxes. Get a free 90-day scan back with a detailed report. Integrate in seconds with 2 clicks via API to Microsoft Office 365 and see what your current email security is missing. Go to ironscales.com/free scan to learn more.
Yeah, I don't think many people talk about the brand reputation enough, when things go bad.
Well, that's right. So let's talk brand reputation real quickly. Name me one oil company that got hacked. It's real simple. Name me some food companies that got hacked. Name me some restaurant companies that got hacked. Name me a technology company that's got hacked. And you know something? They've all gotten hacked. And there is an unfair game out there. The ones that I find are really surprising are technology product development companies that allow malicious code in their source code and go out to the customers. Okay, and those are the ones that I will rip that system out in a heartbeat, and I will never even come close to that system again, because I gotta be able, if I'm gonna buy something, I gotta be able to trust it.
And if I'll pose the same question to you, but from the CISO standpoint, what do they, in your opinion, waste a lot of their time on?
So I'm a big believer in processes, okay? Without a doubt, I'm a big believer in processes because it can really improve the efficiency of an organization. And when it comes down to the Seesaw, a lot of it is threat identification and solving for that threat. Sometimes I think we're too heavy on governance and not high enough on execution. Now, I'm not saying no governance. Don't read that in there. But you got to get the right level of governance. And you got to be able to cast this wide net to understand everything, all the security risks for all your applications. And so I'm really focused on how can we identify the process of identifying a threat and then getting it in and getting it solved. And it's, again, even for the CISO, understanding all the threats that may happen, i.e. There's one vendor that creates firewalls this week, had to put out an emergency patch. Did we pick up on that quick enough and get it in place? Well, we have the capability to roll it out, but did we get it quick enough, or did it languish out there for 2 or 3 weeks? If it languished out there for 2 or 3 weeks, I am vulnerable for 2 or 3 weeks, if not longer. And why is our organization taking us so long? CISO, why is that? So, yeah, we can talk about governance and understanding all this stuff, but let's find it. Let's understand we got an issue, get in a ticketing system so that we can track it, or whatever the system may be, track it and get it into place as soon as possible for all of our systems.
So I want to take it to successes now for a few minutes. You mentioned you had successes as a company, as a leader, as a team during COVID, and as COVID kind of set in. Can you speak a little bit about what you guys did and what other companies missed?
Well, we identified COVID really early as a threat. I mean, part of what you have to go do is work well ahead of these things. And then also we were solving issues inside the organization. So when I first arrived, most of our computing was on towers by desktops. Or by desk. And I said, no, we got to get out of that. So we moved to a laptop, and I said for my desktop teams, standard configuration, let's get one developed. And then as money becomes available, we're going to start rolling it out. And so a year later, or whenever when COVID hit, we only needed 7 laptops to be totally mobile. What did that allow us to go do? We focused on revenue immediately. So we didn't have to, as a restaurant company, we didn't have to close. We had a backbone. We had, because we were doing the projects and we're focusing on revenue, we had a good delivery backbone at the time, and we didn't close. During the summer, we were only down 35% year over year. No drive-through. If you had a drive-through, you were killing it, but no drive-through. In the fall, when we had limited dining rooms opening up, 20%, 25%, whatever, we were only down 10% year over year in pandemic. I had some restaurants doing better without a dining room in the pandemic than they were the year before. And so that's a real testament to the IT team to be able to do that.
And sticking on the achievements of your team, you mentioned many CIOs waste their time on commodity plays. How did you turn IT teams around from being a commodity play to a revenue driving play? Can you give us some examples of how you did that?
Yeah, it was just picking the opportunities. And I know it doesn't sound as simple as that. You don't always say, here's a big strategy when you go into these places. You kind of got to say, here's what it is, and here's the focus, and here's the ROI. And we had issues all over the place. I mean, we had servers from 2003. We had old tape backups, great staff, but they were small and under-resourced. So we had all these type issues, and I couldn't solve them all. But what you can go do and you can control is the different projects and what you're working on and things like that. And so you just prioritize the revenue generating ones. And it sounds simple, but those are the ones you try to go after all the time. And then we eventually did get some capital in, and then we started changing out the servers. We modernized. By the time I left, we modernized all the servers. We were over, of course, we had VMs on the old servers, but we finished VMing everything, and we were in, I won't use the vendor's name, but some really good technology that helped us out in ransomware, data compression, and was able to really lighten the load on our network guy and our infrastructure guy. But we didn't get it immediately. We had to find it. It was a risk for the CFO, to be honest with you, to come do it because we're private equity owned. And of course, they wanted their money. But the other thing was, and it was kind of a funny thing, and I was telling someone else this too, is that because we were able to focus on delivery and focus on revenue, the company went profitable for the first time in years. And it was IT that developed 20% of the revenue stream for the organization, which was huge. The operators did a great job of delivering it and executing it, but it was the systems coming in and delivery that gave us 20% of the revenue, and we went profitable. The organization as a whole made bonus that year, which was really unheard of in that organization. So they were able to make bonus that year, and because we did making money in bonus, that created some capital. Now, you don't get it all, but we got a little bit of slice, and we went after modernization of the infrastructure at that time. So when you start moving out of the commodity and you start adding value and you improve the entire organization, there really is a compounding, rippling effect that goes through the organization.
So would you say that when you focus on revenue, it's easier to get budget?
But when the IT team starts to deliver, when they start solving problems, and you start adding value, of which there is revenue in there, then you start getting budget. If you are just focusing on the cloud, it's all cost basis and so forth, they're expecting you to take what budget you have, and if I move to the cloud or I save some dollars, and moving to the cloud doesn't always save money, but if you can save some dollars, that's good for the organization.
We were talking a little bit about open communication and how important that is to build that culture in security, because I think as a society, we typically adhere to this rank and file mentality. So I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on what you think about open communication in security.
you've got to build that. You've got to build that culture. You've got to build the culture of transparency. Now, you can't. A CIO can't always say everything, like especially merger and acquisitions and some of those things. We can't go disclosing it, or we can disclose it at the right time. But in an IT organization, the more I can communicate as to what's going on, the more the associates will start buying into the organization. It's important that the people have, we've got to execute and we've got to deliver on time. There's kind of if you don't do it, then we're going to have some discussions. But the other part of it is they need to set this environment to where people can bring you problems. Security, they got to be able to bring security problems to you. I think we have this, I think we have that. And then you can say, well, we got to, go get it solved. But the same thing for projects, development projects that are running late, something that breaks, processes, people that may leave, weaknesses in your associates, whatever. You've got to be able to have this ability for people to come talk to you. If you don't have that, then your people will kind of sweep things underneath the rug. And I know a couple of CIOs that had some PCI issues, and they opted not to tell or have the environment. They didn't feel like they could tell. It was really bad for the organization. They didn't last long.
So to your point about, building that in through culture, if it's not apparent, would you say to younger managers and even more experienced to just speak your mind, but, diplomatically, or would you just keep quiet?
No, you speak your mind, but be smart about it, right? Not everything is chicken little, the sky is going to fall, right? You kind of got to say, we got an issue here. You got to realize there are issues all across the organization, and you got to do it professionally. There's some young people, sometimes it's because like the CEOs, CIO, CISOs, they got lots of issues and problems. You've got to prioritize one and fix it. And you want to allow people to bring you the new ones in there, and then you have to prioritize getting it fixed. But you just can't go in there and go, it's going to fall or whatever, and then you're either overstating or understating the problem, and after a while of that, people don't listen to you as well. So good communication is important. And also don't play the game of, I told you and now it's your problem. Yeah, there's some of that stuff. We're all in this together, because if I can't get it done and we have an issue, you're the one cleaning it up also. So we're all in this together. And so be professional about it, identify the risk. And it's up to the leadership of the team is to allow people to bring you issues and problems. If you have walls, or you consider yourself a really senior level executive and so forth, you create these internal barriers in the organization that don't serve you well. In my mind, there's no one that comes to work that wants to go do a bad job. Everyone wants to go do a good job. We have to create this environment that will allow the technologists to excel and to flourish. And so communications, trust, and ability being transparent are key to success of an IT organization. Security, IT, rest of the organization, as a matter of fact.
And the last time we spoke, you mentioned being hacked twice and some of the lessons that you learned from those experiences. So if you don't mind, I would love to get 2 or 3 lessons that you think were the most important that you think our audience would benefit from hearing.
Yeah. Be paranoid. You're probably going to get hacked. It's an unfair battle out there. What I mean by that is, your IT team, small as it is, has a huge, vast infrastructure it's got to maintain. The people that are trying to get in are just looking for one little vulnerability to get in. They're going to exploit it. And then once they get in, you could have issues and problems. So, you've got to it's really an unfair battle. So, and it's not always the IT team where the issue comes from. It could be someone bringing something in. And you got to have this balancing act of time of locking everything down, but you've got to allow the users to do their work and so forth. So, yeah, so some thoughts for you going through this. It's not if you get hacked, it's when you get hacked. You're going to get hacked. Okay, and I don't care who you are right now. You know, Microsoft has been hacked. All the major technology companies have been hacked. Credit card processing companies have been hacked. You're going to get hacked at some point. So that's just kind of the way you need to go. And a lot of people work on the security side of it and prevention, and yep, that's where your emphasis should be. But don't neglect your crisis management piece, because when it goes down, the organization sometimes will go haywire, okay? And they don't necessarily need to, depending on how it is and where they get to in the organization. So, you know, when there are some issues, I'm writing off emails to the CEO, the board, doing status reports on those things. And sometimes it's like, you know, hey, you still, you know, my first lines are, we're still in business. And then here's the impact. Here's what they got, and here's the update. And that's what they got into. And this is what we're working on to go solve it. And this is what you're going to see in the next hour. Just a real simple status report. You got to know the lawyers to talk to. You got to know your privacy lawyers. You got to go look, make sure you have really good insurance in case you need it. Okay. So you've got to have all that stuff in play, because when it goes down, you know, we all know you're working 20-hour days. You're basically living there until you get it remediated and get it back in business. So don't neglect that thought. And then, of course, if you do your monthly meetings and your preparations and this, that, and the other, you will soon, there's one thing to talk about it. You can have your practice drills. It's a totally different thing from when it goes down. So you've got to be prepared, and it's up to you, the CIO and the CISO, to provide the leadership. Because back to your point, CEO doesn't know how to do that, and nor should he. CFO doesn't know how to go do that, nor should he. Legal, yeah, they're going to be in there working with you, but you don't expect them to know how to remediate and get you through this. Don't take us wrong, they're lawyers, right? But they're going to be working with privacy counsel and all the different counsels on your side. Communications, marketing are going to be working with you also, talking to whatever the breach is, working with the customers and the press, whatever it might be. So you've got to be ready for these things, because it's going to happen at some point. And then, depending on how bad it is, you're going to have to disclose. If you are prepared, you're probably, you know, my second one, yeah, we got hacked. Yeah, I lost some back-end processing a little bit, but we didn't have to pay. Okay, because the team was good and prepared. And they got stuck a couple of times, and we had to think out, it's like, who can we get in to help us to go solve that? And we made some calls on a Saturday night, and we were back in business by about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the following week, through a couple of days later.
So would you say that, like, after a breach happens, there's a period of time that goes by and then things go back to normal, like out of sight, out of mind? Or once you're breached, you're taking this seriously now?
Well, we were taking it seriously before.
I mean, in general.
What becomes glaringly obviously are your vulnerabilities. You know, you go, oh, why do we have a mailbox for the vendors to submit their invoices to? And that's how in this one case it came in. You know, a lot of organizations allow vendors to submit invoices outside of an approval authority, and then the AP department does a routing inside of the organization. And so this group put in an email with the invoice that was zipped and got around our email inspection. And because they got around the email inspection, created some issues in the organization. Now, it wasn't the AP person's fault. You know, kind of maybe. They didn't know who it was. But they get hundreds of these things. And they just kind of look at it as, I got to get this process, get the job going. It's my job in accounts payable to go do that.
So I want to go back for a second to the playbook for post-breach. You spoke about building response plans. In your opinion, which companies have done the best job in their PR efforts to apologize and at the same time take responsibility. But I would like to hear from you, at least how would you approach those situations?
Yeah, you'll see a lot of times that you're like the CEO, they will want to protect the brand, protect their customer base, and they don't want problems to go long. And that's why you see people want to, they'll pay the money at the end. And I'm not so sure I can really say who's done a great job at it because, when you start making the press and everything, you do take a hit on the brand. So I'm not sure anyone does it, but I will say to you that, don't take it for granted. There is a playbook. Your playbook can't cover everything. You have your security councils and you're taking a look at it. You do some drills as to how you go do this. And every time you do that and pay a little bit of attention to it, you're going to be much further ahead when these things happen. And they probably will happen at some point at this day and age. And so I know it's very draconian, but it's so simple for someone to create some issues. I'm a huge believer in zero trust, right? I trust nobody. I don't care who you are. I'm a huge believer in network architecture. If you're just on one homogeneous network, stand by, right? They can get in. You're going to make life a little bit miserable for your sysadmins because you're going to have some shared accounts and things of that nature that would just cause you a little, they've got to use it every day because they got a job to go do, but you also know it's a vulnerability. So we got to solve all these things and not have these issues and have these vulnerabilities going forward.
And before we close out today's session, if you could have one resource to do your job better, what would it be?
Seesaw. I really believe that. Why is that? And not every organization can afford it. Just be honest with you. Not every organization can afford a CISO. And then, because when you get down the medium-sized business and the small business, they can't afford that type of a position. And then there are fractional CISOs, but every time we've looked in those type positions, they ain't cheap. You can't afford it. And then you start looking at what's the value for what I pay? Will they really know the infrastructure? Can they really do a good evaluation? And what do they do when they do their evaluation? They ask all the guys that are in-house about the stuff. So it's tough to add a lot of value when you do that. But this day and age, having someone focused on security, focused on vulnerabilities 24 hours a day while I do my job of running all the infrastructure, running all the projects and everything else is very, very huge for me.
And before we really wrap up here, is there anything else you want to add that you think we missed?
Be paranoid. I mean, it sounds like before, but yeah, be a little bit paranoid. Not if, it's when. Don't think that you're buttoned up tight because somewhere you got a vulnerability, and always be on the lookout for those vulnerabilities and get them solved as quick as possible.
Great. So thank you so much, Pete, for your time today. I really appreciate your insights. If anybody would like to reach out to you, talk a bit more about what we spoke about today, where's the best place for people to reach you?
LinkedIn. Pete Gibson, CIO in your search, and I should pop up pretty high in your search. Perfect.
So we'll be sure to add that to the show notes. So thank you so much for joining us today on Cybersecurity Heroes.
Thanks, Brendan.
That's a wrap for this episode of Cybersecurity Heroes. Practical and experiential knowledge on a day in the life of security heroes. Catch our next episode by subscribing through your favorite podcast platform. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating for the show. They really help a lot. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.